Hello, welcome, Eddie. Thanks for joining the Engage Nation podcast, episode 10, the last of season 1. We made it, and we left the best for last, mate. And we've got a lot to cover in this one, and it is pretty broad, talking about all the happenings globally in sport, in business, lots of investment being thrown around from different regions. Seemingly a bottomless pit of money, and it's just interesting to see the direction that's going, and what role sort of technology also plays in that. But before we start to get into some of the individual sort of components of that, do you want to just give us a bit of maybe take us back to the beginning? Actually, how did you break into the sports industry at the start? You know, I think just about every Australian loves sport, and you know most of them would love to work in it. But how did you get your first break?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be on. And just, firstly, congratulations to your Denver Nuggets to win the championship. Just want to give a shout out there. I'm a long-suffering Orlando Magic fan, so hopefully we can follow your lead on that at some point. So, yeah, congrats, mate.
Cheers, Eddie.
Yeah, look, I always wanted to work in sport. I went to the University of Canberra and did sports management and law there, and always knew I wanted to work in sport. I was a mad kind of cricket fan growing up, as well as AFL and some of the English Premier League. My first kind of break, I suppose, was a pretty small one, but it got me on the track. I worked for ACT Cricket when I was in Canberra, just in a administrative role, and since then kind of travelled the globe, working in all different forms of sport. So I worked in Canberra for a while. Worked for the Anti-Doping Authority. As I said, worked for ACT Cricket, and then worked at the World Masters Games in Sydney in 2009, before probably the biggest break of all, when I applied for a job at the International Cricket Council, thinking I'll never get this as a dream job, moving to Dubai, and somehow ended up in the Middle East, not knowing where I was or what I was doing. Left all family, friends back in Sydney at the time, and just kind of thought, let's just follow this journey and see where it goes, and was there for 5 years, which was incredible. So essentially I was working a lot with they're called the associate and affiliate members of the ICC. So and anyone who's a cricket fan might be seeing the Cricket World Cup qualifier at the moment, where one of the associates is going to qualify for the World Cup, and West Indies is not going to make the World Cup, which is a huge thing in cricket. So I was essentially running those events for the pathway programs for the associates. So I got to, and it seems weird speaking about it now, but I was running cricket events in places like Uganda, Italy, Samoa, Ireland, Hong Kong. So yeah, an incredible experience. Learned a lot. Again, first big break, but also worked on Cricket World Cups and things like that, where I got to experience kind of working with the big boys, and kind of understanding all the technicalities and the money side of things in cricket. So yeah, that was my kind of journey before I moved to the US. So I'm happy to kind of continue on the journey on that, or pause for any questions.
No. Well, I'll let you keep rolling through the career. It's pretty amazing, really. But maybe I will start with cricket once you finished up, when you wrapped up, because I think if we had to pick a sweet spot for you, I'd say it's cricket, isn't it? It
is cricket, yeah. But I think on freewheel on most sports, having lived in a number of countries and worked in sport. So yeah, when I left the ICC, my wife actually was working for Emirates in Dubai at the time, and got a promotion to work at Emirates at the head office in New York. Which dream for many Australians is living, working in New York. So we had to say yes, but then I was like, what am I going to do? Like, cricket is not a thing in the US. That's been what I've been doing the last 5 years. How am I going to survive in in a city like New York? And that's where I kind of started my entrepreneurial journey, really, because I really had to kind of reinvent myself. Rather than working in a specific role, doing a specific thing, it was kind of, okay, I've got to, pull my bootstraps up, get out there, and what better place to do it than a place in New York. Fortunately, cricket, there was a couple of cricket things that I got into, and I'm still working on a couple of things, in the US cricket related stuff. But so I started my own business in New York. and worked at the Cricket All-Stars game, which, for cricket followers, was a match between Sachin Tendulkar and Shane Warne, two of the biggest cricket names ever, playing in baseball stadiums. So for the Americans out there, we played at Dodger Stadium, Citi Field, and Minute Maid Park. And we had 34,000 in New York, 28,000 in LA, and 22,000 in Minute Maid Park. And it was just incredible. And, I'd been around cricket all my life, and to see that and the fans and the legends of the game play was incredible. And subsequent to that, I did a number of other cricket things in the US. So I did some consulting work to the Caribbean Premier League when they played a few games in Florida for a couple of years. And we'll probably touch upon this a little bit more. I also was consulting to American Cricket Enterprises, which owns Major League Cricket. So I kind of wrote their kind of cricket strategy for them for about 18 months, which is now, on the cusp. I think it's starting in about a week's time. But in addition to the cricket stuff, again, I did have to kind of reinvent myself. So I didn't just stay only in cricket. I worked for Liverpool Football Club, helping them with which is a boyhood soccer team of mine. So it was fantastic, helping them with their US digital strategy. Did some stuff with the Brooklyn Nets as they look to expand their fan base outside of Brooklyn into international markets. And also worked, and this is where I got into the sports tech side of things, worked at a business called Sponserve as the head of the US, and was with them throughout the whole process when they sold to Core Software in 2019. And that was a SaaS platform that helped brands and rights holders manage the delivery of assets, which was an incredible experience. And that kind of got my first, taste of sports tech, which I now do a lot of work in. So yeah, that's kind of the journey. But then I moved to Denver. As you know, Cal came and saw me one time. Worked at a small agency called Forefront, who got acquired by Legends, I think, last year. So no longer small. Then COVID hit, had to move back to Australia, and have now co-founded another business called SportsRightsTech. And we're 5 people, pretty small boutique agency working in kind of sports consulting, rights and IP management, and also tech, obviously, is the sports tech side of things.
Brilliant. And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about, global sport and the direction it's heading, because of that experience that you've had in a lot of different places in the world. And you've just been exposed to so many different, it's not just the business side of it, but culturally, getting an idea of, where, of where each of these regions, what they're all about, and why they might be getting involved. So let's get stuck into it. I'd say that 2023 so far has really served up some, some huge changes in the sports industry. You've sort of seen it building possibly in a post-COVID world, but if you look at it, even the Qatar World Cup happened late last year in November. You've had, obviously, the Live and PGA. We call it a saga. I don't know. Is it a saga? Maybe a saga. We'll leave it at that for now. But they seem like they're buddies again. We've got lots of teams, lots of players, big name players signing in the Saudi League football. Ronaldo, Benzema, Kante, and the list is getting longer and longer by the day. Lionel Messi's gone to Miami. He's got stock options in with Apple on the back of that. Based on their revenue for viewership. I've got quite a few things here, and it does seem to be based around the Middle East and the US especially. But what is going on?
Well, look, I think it's a fascinating time. I think 2023, we're going to look back and really think, what did happen and how did it change sport? On one hand, you've got kind of the true globalization of sport, and you've mentioned a few examples there. Messi, Saudi League, Live, but also things like NBA stars like your man Jokic, Doncic, Embiid, some probably 3 of the best players in the NBA. You've got the private equity in rugby with the All Blacks, and you've got T20 cricket coming to the US, and on it goes. So this kind of idea of globalization of sport is like it's really kicked into fifth gear. But I think about this quite a bit. This is at a time when global macro level globalization is contracting, right? So we had COVID issues, reduced supply chains, China was closing off to the world, and USA is now looking to bring manufacturing back through the CHIPS Act and things like that. So what I'm thinking about is sport behind on the macro trend, or is it leading it? Or is it an outlier? I'm not sure. I'll lean maybe towards sport being an outlier. As you know, having been in the industry, for many years, I know it's not a typical industry, for good or bad reasons. You have fans who will be fans of the teams or sport no matter what, but you also have the challenges that the industry, generally speaking, is not as open to innovation and change as other industries, and we can go into that when we just talk about the tech side. So I think it's like it's almost like a new dawn for sport, and there's going to be challenges and there's going to be things that people get upset with. Live is one example. Private equity in rugby and in sport generally is another example. Sport is not just for your traditional fans from where you grew up with. It's now got fans all around the world, and this is, for me, it's a great thing. It expands the opportunity for people to be interested in different sports, to get closer to their favorite fans and the stars through the technology that we have. So I think it's, again, I think it's an opening of a new dawn for sport. There's going to be challenges faced. There's going to be people who push back on that. There's going to be people who don't like it. But for me, as an Aussie who has lived all around the world and worked in many different sports and follows many different sports, it's fantastic. There's arguably too much content and too much interesting stuff going on, but that's a good thing.
For sure. And I think that the macroeconomic aspect of it, the trend rather, is interesting too, because I think there's been so much, well, there is still economic uncertainty broadly in business. You've got rising inflation, impending recessions. Want to know where sport falls into that, because often people would say that, and this is certainly at the centre of the discussion, is the the Middle East, and largely wealthy due to their oil, the royal and natural resources. Is sport much like them? It's been said that is immune to some of those some of that uncertainty economically worldwide.
Yeah, look, sport is in a funny place. It's kind of a niche industry in a lot of ways, because the fans who generate the vast majority of the revenue, which gets sport humming, outside of the money that's flowing from elsewhere, is generally immune, because fans are fans no matter what. Even if you're a fan of the Orlando Magic, you're still turning up to the games. You're still buying their merchandise, even if they're not great. You're still going to tune in to watch NFL Sunday or Thanksgiving, let's just say Thanksgiving football in America, because that's what you do. You're still going to tune into the Ashes because that's what you do. Whereas if you're a fan of a brand, and maybe with outside of maybe a Nike or an Apple, where there are a lot of fanboys out there, you're not supporting a brand. So sport has that really interesting niche where it doesn't matter how they're performing or what they're doing, people will continue to turn up and spend money. Now, with the introduction of private equity and outside investment from different parts of the world, there are some challenges there, right? Some people won't like it. Some people will welcome the money and the innovation that can come from that. How sport ingests that capital and that need for innovation and from private equity standpoint, the need for a return is going to be difficult for some people in the industry, no doubt about it. And it's going to be difficult for some fans. Some fans will turn off, but others will, and this is what they're banking on, will turn on, because with money brings the ability to integrate sports technology, to integrate best practice innovation, to integrate interesting things from outside of sport. And that should, in theory, bring in new people, new fans, and therefore more revenue. But we're in the very early stages of, the last kind of 6 to 12 to 18 months maybe of this kind of injection of capital and need for innovation. So, the next couple of years are going to be fascinating.
So do you think that all this investment that's coming in, it feels like at the moment that's certainly reaching the top levels of sport, the elite levels of sport. Do you think there's any sort of trickle down to a sort of participation grassroots level other than, does the money make it down, I suppose, outside of just, more kids will watch more sport because there's, more investment in it and so therefore they'll play more? Is there any other avenue for that to reach at that level?
Yeah, it's interesting one, right?
You did say we're early, right? So it is difficult to say now. So I would preface that.
Yeah, look, I think the main thing that I think about around the grassroots side of things is some of the innovation that's coming around Gen Z and the younger kind of fans of sport and how to bring them in to be fans of sport. We all hear the issues around, Gen Z's not watching sport anymore and they're all on, TikTok or playing, Minecraft or Roblox or things like that. And there's been some really innovative rights holders, I think, that have seen this and have tried to go to them. So you think about the NFL with their Nickelodeon feed, for example, or NHL with their deal with Roblox, which I was really interested in. I actually read a deep dive analysis on Roblox as a business over the weekend. It was absolutely fascinating. So
is that the sort of thing you usually do on a weekend, or is that
in between managing babies and 4-year-olds? That's just my downtime. Because I had been thinking about this a lot. Because you're right, the money goes to the top end of sport, but the lifetime value of a customer, a fan, if you can get that child, or teenager interested in golf or NFL when they're 8, they've got a 70, 80 year lifetime value, right? Whereas if you're just keeping pandering to the 40, 50, 60-year-old fan of golf who likes, watching the majors and some of the PGA Tour, then that's got a very limited value. So that's why, technology integration for rights holders and teams, the ones who are leaning into it now, trying to understand that and how to get the most out of their fans and also get them playing, is going to be winning. Is going to have better chance of success moving forward. But again, very early, hard to tell.
Do you want to just jump into that? I know you read the deep dive, mate. So the NHL and the Roblox one was around a metaverse experience, wasn't it? You just want to give us an idea about what that was, just to bring it to life a little bit about an example.
Yeah, so they put together. So starting a little bit back from Roblox, that's a lot of my family, a lot of my friends' children are playing it. They're on it constantly. It's not the most, it's not like Fortnite or things like this where it's amazing graphics, but it's a way of building worlds, and it's a very user-generated content type game. Again, I don't play it, so I don't want to explain it in too much detail. But the NHL had a partnership with them, and they've done a couple of other partnerships with sports teams around showing the games in a Roblox-like environment, so that children are ingested into the game, watching the NHL games through the lens of Roblox, which again they'll try to push over them into NHL fans to watch the game live and get them into sponsorship and branding. I think it's very early in that, but I was just fascinated with the NHL being able to kind of look around the corner and think, how are we going to get younger fans involved in this sport? And they're going to go to the way that these kids are ingesting content, or being more involved in the content, I should say, rather than just being a screen to the child. They're actually watching it, following it, being involved in the game. So yeah, I'd take my hat off to the NHL for that one. Really
interesting, because I think sometimes you've got your channels your traditional channels, and expect them to come to you, but sometimes you've got to go to them and hang out where they hang out. And I think that's such a good, such a huge shout. And I think there's other examples of that where whether it is a Fortnite thing or they're all Gen Z's probably the hottest property from a rights holders perspective. That's who you want to be going after because of the lifetime value of I think we're looking at doing a piece on that too. If you get them at 8 years old, you've probably got them. I wrote in my Denver Nuggets article even that I picked him when I was 11 or 12 because I thought the player was cool and the uniforms are cool. It doesn't take much, does it?
Not for kids. For kids, it doesn't. No. Even my son, who's 4.5, I'm trying to get him to watch The Ashes and he wants to put on Paw Patrol. I'm like, okay, well, let's just see what happens here. Do you understand what happened with this stumping? No, I don't think anyone does. Anyway, let's leave that one for our English friends to stew over.
I'll send it over to our UK customers. That part. Interesting, right? Let's do a bit of tech, and I think you talked about the world constricting a bit. Technology certainly because of COVID. All of a sudden, I don't know, us as a business, I don't know what this would look like. We've got small teams all across the globe, and whether that would have even not even been possible, but even considered to be viable before COVID happened. Where if we're not in the same room, how on earth are we going to work together? Now, because of that, the world does feel smaller. How is technology playing a role when we're talking about globalization? We are talking about the world shrinking. What role has technology played in this whole topic, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, a huge role, really. From working from home to Roblox to new sports tech with chips embedded in the ball to sport, to gambling, and the data that that rights holders and leagues are starting to put together to invite more gambling data, particularly in the US as they look to build out that offering. But it's funny, until very recently, there hadn't been many sports tech casualties because it seemed to be a little bit immune from the kind of macro tech trend where Meta and Twitter and these ones are having a bit of a meltdown. They're laying off tens of thousands of people. There's a liquidation crunch due to all the kind of policies that are happening with policymakers all around the world, and sports tech seemed a little bit immune to that. But as of this week, I was thinking about this. Buzzer, who had raised $44 million for a platform that issuing notifications about existing matches or moments, they shut down. And they were, one of the most highly touted, 2 or 3 years ago on this is the future, microtransactions for a live stream, and I thought it was fantastic. I was really interested in it. They had deals at the end. No, I didn't. But yeah, because I was, I didn't use it, but I was endlessly fascinated about how they would kind of go about it.
Yeah. It's just interesting though. I think everyone was sort of interested and go, this could be good, but they didn't actually pull the trigger on using it, and here we are. That's right.
Yeah. So perfect example. I would be probably one of the key people that you would want to have on that platform, right? I've got American sports teams and all the sports. I've got an English Premier League team, I've got Australian sports team. I would be the one who, I want to watch 99 cents to see if my Magic can finally get a win, right? That I didn't follow it up, that's quite informative, you're right. And then something like, another one that I follow quite closely, but it's a little bit more engaged with, fan-controlled football league. Not sure if you're across that one. They've just moved from a league. So they did, I think, two seasons to only supplying their technology. So this was a league, just a bit of context, this was a league where fans could vote on a number of things like drafting players. They could call in-game plays. It was played on a kind of smaller indoor field that had a bespoke venue that was built in Atlanta, I think. They stream the games on Twitch. They got some great engagement, some great numbers, and all the rest of it. And I was actually keen to see that kind of idea explored for other sports, quite frankly, because again, me being a sports guy and a tech guy, thinking if I can be more involved and in my team rather than just a screen and a person experience, that's the next iteration of that Roblox example that we just made. So perhaps they were too early, but they've just closed down Fan Control Football League, and they've just pivoted to, as I said, supplying their tech. So they were using kind of NFTs and Web3 in order to show that you had the ability to vote on something through the blockchain. It was really seamless, really easy. So I think they're looking to use that for other sports. And look, outside of those two, specific examples, I know a number of other sports tech companies that I'm either involved with or have been or am talking to, because a lot of deal flow comes across my desk. They've been, and many have been very successful. They've consolidated their core offering and have, shrunk teams, put expansion plans on ice. I think I'm not a finance guy or a macro guy, but I do follow it a little bit. And I think the whole recession thing, everyone's kind of been talking about it for a while now. We might be coming out of it. So maybe everyone's just consolidating, holding their kind of what they've got as a core offering, with the idea that we'll be back soon enough if we just keep the tires on the track, keep our core offering as solid as it is, then we'll be back in no time and able to expand. So I think it's leaked out a little bit to sport. But I also, again, I'm still very bullish on the sports tech space. And I'm involved with some people and some funds in the space. The industry attracts a lot of interesting people who have been successful in other industries but love sports, as most people do. And there is very much a narrative that tech in sports can be used as a test and learn environment for other industries. So think like wearables, consumer and fan data, obviously, which you guys are very much across, general business intelligence and data capture. So I like this idea of sports being a really interesting test bed for wider application use. And I'm seeing that with a lot of things that are starting to come across my desk now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Whether before you trial it in a bigger market, not that sport's a small market now, but whether you try something here first. I mean, I actually had in my notes that is sport immune to all this going on? And then this week the buzzer stuff came out, and I was like, okay, so the answer is no. But the question is, it's just, as you said, some of this stuff just might be too early. Obviously, the NFT space is in a bit of a pretty bear market at the moment. Whether depends who you ask, is whether it comes back from that or not, and that just might be too early. But whether that stuff that's going on with tech, and obviously we saw what happened with SVB going under, and there's been that tech world is flowing over into sport, and that is being affected just by association. So one thing I would also like to touch on is India. I know a bit of a sweet spot for you, cricket guy, and the youngest country in the world, the most populated country in the world, and actually a very tech savvy country as well. What's going on over there? I think there's huge opportunity. I've read quite a bit of stuff. Even another podcast you did with Andrew Petcash, had to listen to that too on Profluent Sports. There's a huge opportunity in India, and it's one of the regions we haven't actually touched on yet. So yeah, give us a bit of an outline. It'd be remiss of us to talk about globalization of sport without mentioning India. So what's going on?
Yeah, look, I think one of the trends that we kind of didn't touch upon for 2023 is definitely the rise or potential rise of India. I think it will be a rise. Like, yeah, as you said, very young demographic, now the most populous country in the world. They are democratic. They have, let's say, better relations with the Western countries than, say, China does. So those kind of macro trends are very strong in India, regardless of sport. But then when it comes to sport, I mean, cricket is the one and pretty much the only sport that matters over there. And until 10, 15 years ago, before IPL, they had, they're on quite an even keel with many of the other, members, Australia and England in particular. But since the introduction of the IPL and the money coming in there, it's just absolutely bonkers, that league. And anyone who hasn't watched it or followed it should be, because it's just an incredible success story of what they've been able to achieve. And interestingly enough, that's, the conversation with Andrew, on Profluence is just, an example of what I've started to get from a lot of my American kind of sports business friends over there, is like, what's all this cricket stuff about? And that's, come about through the media rights money that was just given to the IPL. So I think it's now outside of the NFL, it's the second highest grossing per match after the NFL for media rights. The valuations of some of those franchises are up in the top 10 now, I think. And so these American sports people have started to invest in it. I think some athletes have. I think some, Apple's been there for a while now. So people are starting to really take it seriously in the sports business industry. As I said before, there's Major League Cricket, which is just starting in about a week or so's time, which I was involved with a while ago. Really interested to see how that goes. Starting in Dallas and North Carolina, 4 of the teams have ownership from 4 IPL teams, which is fascinating. There's two Australian state associations, New South Wales and Cricket Victoria, are helping 2 of the teams with various things around the cricket operations side of things. So again, let's go to India, but then there's the US, and there's a globalization side of things on the cricket side. And then you add in technology in India. That, as you said, very, very young, very tech savvy, very mobile friendly. I think like Reliance Industries, who actually owns one of the IPL teams, the Mumbai Indians, made a huge gamble 5-10 years ago about making data usage and mobile phone ability for the Indian population to be, next to zero, which has just helped, the access for that country to, the internet and data and everything else has come. And there's a lot of amazing sports tech companies coming out of India doing a whole bunch of stuff that, I'm across and I've been involved with and I'm talking to a number. So there's just this real swell of sports business, sports technology, the US looking to India, again, not to China. Modi was just in the US and had some time with Biden. So for me, it's like the next 10 years are going to be fascinating. There will no doubt be challenges. There'll no doubt be some bumps along the road. But yeah, I'm very bullish on Indian sport and Indian sports tech.
So the first thing that's amazing, and I think just sheer volume, weighted numbers, and the market there, all signs point to a huge future. The question I would ask is around the infrastructure. There's not too many people who've been to India for sure, but we've I went last year for 3-4 weeks, and amazing place, incredible, nuts. I was exhausted afterwards. I think I napped for a week after a week in Delhi. But one thing is pretty evident is obviously there's quite a bit of poverty there, and also from an infrastructure perspective, I think if you look at cricket from the ground up as the obvious as the main example, what's in place there, and could that for growth and pathways and high performance and that's from a sports perspective, not necessarily from a technology one. Is that going to hinder any sort of growth? Is that going to hold it back, or is it just sheer just because there's so many of so many people there, makes it even harder to set up? Is that going to pull it back at all, or is that the only thing that could get in the way of the growth?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, and there certainly does need to be, in order for India to, and let's take a step back from cricket and look at the performance of Indians in the Olympic Games, and relative to their population, it's not great. And that comes back to infrastructure. It comes back to money coming from government. Look at Australia and England, how they invest. And the US, of course, a lot of money, government money, lottery money into the performance of their high performance centres. So, yes, infrastructure is lacking. There's, but you also, it's such a juxtaposition, because you see cricketers, I'm sure you would have, people playing cricket just everywhere, like on the road, on the, on just any field there is, they'll play cricket. So I think if there's a will, there's a way on that side of things. Like, the passion is never ending. But look, from a financial perspective, the reality is that India, there's the vast majority is still in poverty, as you say. So, and that can't be fixed overnight. We're confident, I think they're all confident they'll get there. And it's, upward mobility has been a huge trend for India over certainly the last kind of 10 years. And sport is a way of showing, how projecting to the world how good you are as a nation, right? We, as Australians, we punch above our weight in Olympic Games and various other sports, and because we see sport as a way to say that we're here, we're on the world stage, and people think about Australians, they think about our sporting prowess in many ways, and I'm sure India are also thinking the same way. But you can't do that without good infrastructure, good grassroots programs. Obviously, they've done an incredible job, with cricket, and even sports like soccer are coming up. There's some investment going on in there. Kabaddi, which I touched upon in Pet Catcher's podcast, really interesting sport. Table tennis, badminton. They're coming up, but it's not going to be flick the switch and India turn into a superpower across a whole bunch of different sports. And even from a commercialization perspective, there's going to be with the tech scene, or even just the leagues outside of cricket, that's going to take a while, and it's going to take some people on probably the government and the sports side of things saying, if we're really serious about this and projecting India to the world, not just financially and everything else, but sport is going to be a way to do that. So again, it has to be hand in hand. They can't just rely on pure numbers in order to be successful.
Yeah, interesting, great insight, mate. And let's zoom back out again. We're getting close to the end here, but I just want to have a look at what you think the next 3 years look like. I think 23, has been, it feels like, maybe it's just because I've been following it more, but it's certainly been in the news. I'll reel off some of the stuff, but, Formula One teams, they're turning away $1 billion ownership offers. In 2004, Jaguar sold to Red Bull for $1. India obviously exploding. There's a cricket league starting in the US. They have a Rugby World Cup in 2031. Some random sports getting some serious investment like pickleball and slam ball. Messi's gone to Miami. The best players in the NBA aren't from the US. Live, the Saudi League, Qatar World Cup. I mean, it's just insane what's going on. 2023 is going to be known for something. It's maybe a turning point, or at least a real groundswell. What's the next 3 years look like from your perspective globally?
Yeah, I think that trend continues, and I think it gets even more interesting. So there's probably a couple of things. I think there's going to be some real challenges and pressure put upon let's say the second, third tier sports and leagues. I am concerned about media rights and the number that has been given and consistently rising over the last, however many years. And there's been a lot of commentary on this around, have we hit peak media rights? It could well be, right? And will that money that's been going to the EPL, the NFL, continue? Possibly, because of these things you've said, like the internationalization, the globalization of it. And these are incredible, really incredibly well-run businesses. But what will happen to those second, third tier leagues? And and teams, because that's certainly something that needs to be considered. Then there are and you mentioned it before, that there are the upstart leagues and sports like pickleball that have seemingly come out of nowhere, and this idea of kind of celebrity endorsement, other sports athletes investing in leagues. Tomorrow Sports is another one, the golf league, which has got some incredible investors to come in. Pickleball got some incredible investors. Things like, I'm really intrigued with, and I mean follow it very closely, things like the Kings League out of Spain, run by Gerard Piqué, a new innovative take on an existing sport that doesn't try to be La Liga, but it goes to what Gen Z are doing, using Twitch, got YouTube celebrities involved in it, innovation being a really key part of it. And I'm working on a couple of things in that space which I'm really excited about. So I almost see the kind of top leagues aren't going to go anywhere. The media rights might stabilise, get slightly bigger, because the globalisation push is going to continue, and the messy thing is going to make MLS go like that. The NFL is not going anywhere. EPL is not going to go anywhere, but does it stabilise somewhat? And then some of that money from that top level, from the players and the leagues, is potentially going to get recycled down into these more, let's say, innovative formats of existing sports. And what does that kind of middle rung look like? That's something that I've been thinking about a lot over probably the last 2 or 3 months.
Awesome. We're going to finish with a segment called Eddie's Crystal Ball. Just came up with that. And just a couple of quick fire questions to bring us home. So 20-second answers. What do you reckon?
Yep.
Tops, right. Major League Cricket. Will it land in the US or not?
Tough one. Yes.
Do you want it to? Is that just because you want it to, or it actually will?
I think with the IPL owners being involved, with the demographics of primarily South Asians in the US and their household income levels, with some of the names that have been brought in for year one, I want to believe that it will be successful, and I think it can be, but it'll definitely have some challenges in the early stages.
Great. Tech one for you. NFTs dead or wounded?
Ooh, wounded. I'm still pretty bullish on it. Obviously, they're struggling right now across the board, not just sports ones, but the general NFT scene. I think the idea of digital collectibles in a world where we're all going to be much more digitally native, even more so now moving forward, is going to mean that these things, and probably the ones around now, probably 1% will be valuable, but I think in 10 years' time, we're going to be looking at it and saying these things actually do resonate with a digitally native audience, which we're all going to be.
Nice one. Will pickleball become a household sport, or is it just a flash in the pan?
I'm following it a little bit. So I'm going to say flash in the pan. I'm going to go flash for this one. I think everyone gets excited by the investors as NBA players and whatever, and we've just seen with Buzzer that doesn't actually guarantee success. So yeah, it's just interesting to see whether that people actually view it regularly or it's just a bit of a fad. Yeah, I'd say flash, but again, like if they can get this whole innovation side right, if they can get celebrities really heavily involved in it, they've got a chance, but they need to kind of embrace the fact that they're not a traditional sport.
Yep. Okay. Last one. Would the Magic win a title in the next 10 years?
Yes.
In the 9th or 10th year?
Probably when Paolo is at his peak at 28. So what's he got? 7 years, six or 7 years. Yep. That's it.
It's nice sitting from the top of the perch for once, just looking
Enjoy
out
it.
at the rest of the NBA. It's fantastic.
Enjoy it, mate. Enjoy it.
I am. I will. Eddie, thanks so much. Awesome insight. It was a no-brainer to get you on to talk about this sort of thing. There's just so much going on in the world at the moment, and with your experience and fingers certainly on the pulse, reading white papers on the weekend. I was no better person to have on and discuss all the ins and outs. And there's just so much going on. It's an exciting time, no doubt. But again, thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Cheers, Carl. Really enjoyed it. Thanks so much. Chat soon.